It's Fill Your Plate Now, where every bite brings you closer to the farm gate and further from what's unhealthy. Now, here's your hosts, Julie and Tammy, helping you live well by filling your plate well.
Well, Julie, how was your night's sleep last night?
Last night was good, but I can't confess with all honesty that every night is a good sleep night. So,
And you know, this time of year, ending the year, getting into the new year, I mean, there's so much going on, both
yes.
in work and outside of work. Sometimes my mind is just racing at night, and it's tough to get a good night's sleep.
Yeah, and that's where I find that I sometimes feel like I struggle the most is that trying to fall asleep. And of course, when you do fall asleep deep, you don't remember it until you wake up again. But just that everything's racing in your head because you're going through what you need to get done the next day. Or
The other day, I woke up at 3 in the morning and it's like, okay, I need to do this, and this. And then if you don't sleep well, it's easy to use caffeine as a crutch, which I know isn't good because then you start into that vicious cycle. So today there's someone for both of us.
Yay, I am ready. I'm so ready for this.
An expert on nutrition and sleep. Today we have a sleep expert. Carmen Meyer is a registered dietitian and nationally recognized expert in her field, specializing in culinary nutrition and nutrition for better sleep. In fact, she's authored 2 books. One is Eat to Sleep, What to Eat and When to Eat for a Good Night's Sleep, and Everything Diet Meal Prep Cookbook. And she's host of her own PBS special program based on her website. And did I do that again? Dang it. Okay, let me just start at that one point. Diet Meal Cookbook, and host of her own PBS special program based on her book, Eat to Sleep. She's the founder of the nutritionadventure.com, a recipe website, and NourishWell Network, a consulting company providing wellness programs and culinary events to businesses and residential communities. And what I really love is that she's got the scientific background from the nutrition training and being a registered dietitian,
Yes.
as well as the application with the culinary side.
Very impressive.
Yes. So welcome, Carmen. It's great to have you with us today.
I'm so happy to be here with you, Tammy and Julie. Thanks for having me on.
And, you know, I'll just jump right in. Just tell us a little bit about your background. I know we covered it in the intro briefly, but how did you become interested in nutrition and sleep and the culinary area?
Well, I became interested in nutrition really from a young age. I remember in elementary school learning about the digestive tract and just thinking that was so cool. Um, and I loved science in general. I knew that being a doctor or nurse wasn't a good fit for me, but wanted to be somewhere in a science field. And also at a young age, I was in 4-H programs. Some of your listeners may be very familiar
Yay.
with that, but I personally really loved the cooking projects. And so, learning how to bake bread and just trying different recipes. And way back then, of course, I was learning the food pyramid in that. But the nutrition component really just fascinated me. And so once I was thinking about college, I came across dietetics and I just knew that that was the right fit for me. And so I pursued that path, did the undergrad, of course, the internship, sat for the exam, and I've been a dietitian since 2010. My career started in long-term care, so I was working with the geriatric population, which I loved so much, and it was there really that I started thinking more about sleep because in that population, I was seeing more sleep issues. There was not I guess, set schedule for people, and they were struggling with sleep for various reasons. So it was kind of just like hmm, is there anything I could be doing to help them with their sleep? So just that inquisitive nature, started looking into that. And then right after I worked in that job, I moved into behavioral health. And so there's a bi-directional relationship between psychiatric disorders and sleep disturbances. So again, I was really looking more into sleep to see how I might be able to potentially help people that I was working with in a group setting. And because I was talking about sleep so much with both of those groups, I started writing about it. And eventually, years later, a publishing company wanted a dietitian to write a book on that topic of nutrition for better sleep. They found my content online, and the first book came about. So that's kind of, it wasn't a straight path, but that's how I ended up where I am today.
You know what fascinates me is your culinary background. A nutritionist, but your culinary background, and obviously through your book, that's all revealed. And obviously, good cooking impacts sleep. But how so? Like, in a quick overview, how would you describe that for our listeners?
Well, nutrition is great, and we need to understand, or especially as dietitians, we need to understand how nutrients play a role in supporting our health. But nutrition isn't really nutrition until we eat the food, right? So we can't get that nourishment unless we actually eat it. And so we have to think about the culinary aspect to then share that with the people we're speaking to, whether it's in an inpatient setting, outpatient, wherever dietitians are practicing. We have to have that culinary component because that's how we eat. And so um, I am so thankful I have that clinical nutrition background to help explain why certain nutrients like tryptophan and magnesium, melatonin, how they support the sleep wake cycle. But having the culinary background really helps me provide practical recommendations on what someone can actually prepare and eat at home to help with sleep.
Excellent.
Yeah, that's amazing. And I have a mom who is a senior, and I know when I'm over visiting her, she's in an independent living facility. Um, a lot of times they're talking about how they don't sleep. So when you said working in a assisted or a elderly facility, long-term care, I think it was, you said, right?
Yes. Yes.
And I thought that makes sense. But even just talking to friends and neighbors, a lot of people do not get enough sleep. Any idea of what percentage of people are not getting the sleep they need, and how much they really should be getting?
hmm Yes, for most adults, we need about 7 to 8 hours. Some people might find that with 7 hours, that's, the best place for them to be, whereas other people may need a little bit more at 8 hours. And of course, for kids, adolescents, it's more sleep, but we actually start to need a little less sleep once we reach adulthood. And it's estimated that about 1/3 of adults sleep less than 7 hours a night. And, whether it's actually a short term insomnia, chronic insomnia, or just the occasional poor night of sleep, it is kind of hard to get the hard and fast stats on that. But again, about 30% of people are struggling with sleep in some way. And you mentioned it just being winter time. I found this stat recently from the Sleep Foundation, but during the winter, 70% of adults with seasonal affective disorder feel more tired in this time of year compared to 44% of adults who do not have seasonal affective disorder. So we're in the thick of it.
So once you put all those numbers together, we probably all could benefit from her tips that she's going to give us today.
Absolutely. And on that, and you highlight that what we eat and how much we eat. So top level insights for us, what we eat and maybe how much and when. What are some of the baseline insights that you can give us?
Yeah. Well, I will say, of course, there's so many reasons why people might be falling short on sleep, right? It could be a physiological reason like hormonal changes or stress, sleep apnea, acid reflux, or maybe it's more related to lifestyle factors, just having an inconsistent sleep schedule, sleep wake schedule, or caffeine consumption. So, what we eat and when we eat it could potentially have a positive or negative impact with many of the reasons that I just mentioned. So, again, just keeping in mind that there are always several factors at play, but nutrition is definitely an important part of the puzzle and something that we should at least think about. If we have a poor night of sleep, think back to yesterday. How are you feeling? How much coffee or other caffeinated beverages did you have? Did we get enough fruits and vegetables in? Because there are lots of nutrients that we can find in just our fruits and vegetables alone that can help set us up for a better night of sleep. So we can't, I wish I could say, like, if you eat these certain foods every day, then you're just going to sleep great.
Okay.
But there's a little more to the story.
It sounds like it's dependent too then on the individual, what they're actually dealing with, their health profile. So no easy answers, but the reality is that the nutrition and, when you go to bed and all that stuff will be a factor in the profile of that individual who might be struggling with sleep.
Yes, yes.
You mentioned caffeine and coffee. You probably heard us in the intro when I said that that's kind of my go-to if I haven't had enough sleep. And I know we have to be careful about overconsumption of caffeine. But any other specific foods or beverages you think that you need to stay away from if you're not getting enough,
Yeah.
sleep or having difficulty?
Yeah. Yeah, we can start with those things that maybe we should limit or avoid to help improve sleep, and then focus in on things that we can eat more of, which is always the more fun part. So with caffeine, yeah, it can become kind of a vicious cycle when we don't sleep well. We need to get through our day, whether it's work or just a day in general, where you're trying to get things done. And so caffeine is often the first thing people reach to. And a little bit of caffeine is not a problem. And when I say a little bit, about 200 milligrams a day. And to put that into context, about 1 8-ounce cup of coffee can contain about 95 milligrams of caffeine. So whether it's drinking coffee or tea, even certain sodas, they can all have caffeine. Some people are more caffeine sensitive. So that just means if they have that cup of coffee, it may impact how they feel a little bit more, and it can stay in their system a little bit longer. So the recommendation is to cut caffeine intake off by about 8 to 10 hours before you're trying to go to sleep, especially if you're caffeine sensitive.
And I think a lot of people, Julie and I were talking about this, I think, before we started. A lot of people don't realize that a cup of coffee is not necessarily 8 ounces. It can be 12 ounces or 16 ounces with the size of cups and things that we have today. So, yeah, I find it fascinating. Every once in a while, I'll as a dietitian, pull out a measuring cup and measure things to see, is this exactly what I thought it was? And it's generally, I'm generally pouring or eating a much larger portion than I anticipated.
Right.
So,
Yeah, same here. And I would assume this is with any caffeinated drink. Tea would fall into that same cycle. And you will tell me if I'm correct or not. I've heard that tea can have as much caffeine or sometimes more than coffee. Is that true? Or
It can be pretty close. So black tea has the most caffeine of all the different varieties of tea. And then green tea will have a little bit less caffeine than black tea. There's white tea, and so white tea has less caffeine than that green tea. But yeah, there's so many different types of tea. And one thing I will mention here, because I am seeing it more often, I love matcha, which is a green tea powder. Um, And it is great for us. It has antioxidants. It has L-theanine, which helps with more long-lasting energy. But I see a lot more kids drinking matcha these days, and I don't think parents realize sometimes that matcha has a good amount of caffeine. I don't want to say a number because I'm not going to be spot on. Um, but again, with the amount of matcha, how much kids are getting, or and even adults, and not realizing it. Because I know if I drink a matcha after noon in my day, I'm not gonna sleep great that night. So, everybody's different. Some people can drink a cup of coffee or a caffeinated soda right at bedtime and sleep. They're not caffeine sensitive, and that is okay for them. Other people, they're gonna have a different type of night as far as sleep.
Yeah, I remember with my kids, I totally banned caffeine from them when they were younger because they would bounce off the walls. It was not a fun evening. Uh,
And it wasn't candy.
it wasn't candy, but that was another thing I wondered too. Are sweets and a lot of sugar right before you would go to sleep going to hamper your sleep as well?
It can, yes. So having a lot of refined sugar, those simple sugars that are quickly absorbed into the bloodstream, can cause some issues with sleep. And so, especially as we get closer to bedtime, we want to set ourselves up for success with that sleep. And so, instead of maybe going for just a piece of candy or some chocolate, even, we could do something that has a little bit more of those complex carbohydrates, those sugars that are not going to be quickly absorbed into the bloodstream and cause the blood sugar imbalances. So maybe instead you have some yogurt with fruit. You get that satisfying sweetness through your yogurt, your fruit, rather than having just some candy that will spike the blood sugar, potentially cause a drop off in the middle of the night. And those sudden blood sugar drops can cause you to wake up. So often if someone finds themselves waking up in the middle of the night feeling a little bit sweaty, and it's, they just jolt awake, feeling a little bit anxious, they don't know what woke them up, I like to ask about what they eat for dinner. Do they have a bedtime snack? Is it something related to blood sugars? And how can we, again, set them up for success in their sleep by just tweaking what they have in the evening?
Great, great.
Yeah. So we're going to ask you some of the, nutrients that are supposed to be good. And one of them is the tryptophan. Did I say it right?
You did.
So supposedly it plays a key role. Explain it and give us the insights to that key role.
Yes, so tryptophan is definitely important for sleep. It can't be manufactured in the body, so we do have to consume foods in order to get that in. And the interesting thing about tryptophan that most people may not know, it's a precursor for serotonin production. So we need tryptophan in order to make serotonin. And serotonin is kind of known as this like happy neurotransmitter. It helps with regulate appetite and digestion. It supports sleep and memory, and low levels of serotonin have been linked to depression, poor memory, negative mood. So, again, just to kind of go back, we need that tryptophan to help with serotonin in the body. And then serotonin is converted to melatonin. We know melatonin impacts that sleep wake cycle. And again, those things are all tightly connected. And if we're missing the tryptophan at the beginning of that cycle, then we may not end up with enough melatonin down the road.
So what are some of the foods where I'm going to get the tryptophan?
We can find tryptophan in all of our animal food products. So whether it's actually eating meat, whether, whatever meat you prefer, or dairy foods, cheese,
Yay.
yogurt, cottage cheese. I know, all foods that I love too. Um, those are great sources of tryptophan. Um, and so having adequate amounts, which, I don't have a number. I haven't found a good number to tell me like a percentage of people who are deficient in tryptophan. Um, but just knowing that if you're not eating some of those foods on a regular basis, it may be something to look into and talk to a registered dietitian about, and maybe just see how that is impacting your sleep.
Excellent.
Yeah, good point. And, having written an entire book on
Hmm.
nutrition and sleep, was there anything when you were researching it and working on it that surprised you as far as foods that were beneficial or eating patterns that were beneficial to help you sleep?
Well, I mean, it's all really fascinating. I think I had heard about melatonin, and a lot of people think about melatonin when it comes to sleep issues. That's often the first place they turn, and usually it's a supplement. But we can get melatonin through certain foods, like tart cherries are a good source of melatonin. Almonds, walnuts provide melatonin as well, egg yolks. So I always encourage people to look towards foods first, because not only are you getting that melatonin, but you're getting a lot of other good for you nutrients. We have a synergistic effect when we eat, um, again, tart cherries, let's say, or drink tart cherry juice. We get more nutritional bang for our buck than if we just take a melatonin supplement. So, you know, that alone is always interesting. But in addition to that, just learning how tryptophan, serotonin, and melatonin are all connected, and then the role of magnesium in sleep, which magnesium is definitely getting more attention now than it was in 2018, 2019 when I was writing this book. I think more and more people are aware of how it can support good sleep. Now, there are different forms of magnesium. So, if that's something that someone is lacking when it comes to supplements, then they may need to look at magnesium glycinate to help with sleep, or magnesium citrate. The citrate form can have potentially some more digestive impacts. So, again, from a supplement standpoint, I usually suggest a magnesium glycinate first, but food before that, even, because we can get magnesium from our leafy green vegetables, avocados, bananas, some whole grains. So there's a lot of good food sources out there um, that we can choose first.
So, Carmen, I like to get personal and learn more about people. And one of the things I'm curious about, if you can recall, because I know doing the research, writing the book, that's been some time, but was there anything that you, and now that you've taught us more about melatonin, serotonin and melatonin, was there anything that you adjusted in your day to day, your daily life, because of your research and then writing that book? I'm just curious.
Yeah. One thing was learning about the effects of alcohol and sleep. Um, you know, back then I maybe would have two alcoholic beverages a week with dinner, or, just in the evening time. It might be red wine. Um, but after looking into the research and learning more, unfortunately, alcohol will just interfere with sleep. There's really no way around it. It has to be out of our system in order for us to sleep well. And so that really stood out to me, because I noticed that if I did have that glass of red wine with dinner, even though I might have thought I slept okay, the next day I just felt a little more tired. Even from a mood standpoint, it just didn't feel quite as sharp. And we have so much research that really shows that, again, alcohol interferes with getting a good night's sleep. You won't reach those deep stages of sleep, the restorative stages of sleep. So, I personally decided that if I was going to have an alcoholic beverage, it was probably only going to be one, and I was going to make sure there was enough time between having that drink and before going to bed, rehydrating well to help flush it from my system.
It's so interesting that you should say that because a lot of times friends or acquaintances, family will say, that one glass of wine just relaxed me and I felt like I fell to sleep. You get further into the conversation and they start complaining about that they're not sleeping well at night. And now I'm kind of seeing a connection, whether I recognize that or not.
It sounds a lot, yeah. Timing, I think, is something that's very interesting because what you were talking about caffeine and timing. And with wine, what would you say, 3 or 4 hours prior to going to sleep?
Yes.
Europeans have wine at lunch. Maybe that's what we should be doing.
That's our problem. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, make sure you drink plenty of water.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I thought you were going to say drink plenty of wine at lunch. Okay. Never, wait a second. We're going down the wrong path. And, in terms of
That's
timing.
not my recommendation.
Yeah. Okay.
It's not coming from Carmen.
Carmen said no. Me maybe, but no, not Carmen. Okay. No, I totally agree. Don't mean to give the wrong impression there. And also timing wise, talk to us a little bit about evening meals. What kind of composition we should have there, or how far, how early we should eat prior to going to sleep, and if that affects our sleep pattern.
I love this question because having been a dietitian for 15 plus years now, I've heard a lot or been asked a lot, like, when should I stop eating in the evening? What's my cutoff time? And I know people always love to have like a hard and fast answer, but sometimes we just can't say that. Now, what we eat at dinner, what it's composed of, like you asked, most importantly, having protein, some fiber, and good healthy fats. And that's really true for all meals throughout the day. Those macronutrients that we can get are protein, carbohydrates, fat, because we get different nutrients from those 3 different groups. And that variety of nutrients can help support good sleep in a variety of ways. One being good blood sugar control. We talked a little bit about those kind of blood sugar roller coaster rides that we do not want to be on during the day, and definitely not in the middle of the night because it could cause us to wake up. But having that balance of protein, fiber, fat helps regulate and kind of stabilize those blood sugars. And we have those 3 macronutrients represented. Again, we're getting tryptophan, most likely from that protein source on our plate. We could get the magnesium from our high fiber foods, maybe our leafy greens that we put on the plate. And then as far as like having a healthy fat, maybe it's some avocado that we add. And that avocado has the healthy fat, but also some magnesium. And so it's all about good variety at all of our meals, but those macronutrient balances as well. And then I'd like to add here, because we talked about dinner, let's also talk about bedtime snacks, because sometimes people feel hungry before bed and they feel like they can't eat something because they're going to ruin their diet, or it's too many calories, or whatever reason they might think. But I encourage people, if they actually are feeling hungry before bed, that they have a little bit of something, because if you go to bed hungry, you're probably going to wake up in the middle of the night hungry. So it's not going to set you up for success with sleep. Instead, choose a small snack. Maybe it's a piece of whole grain toast with some nut butter on it, a few banana slices. That snack alone has that protein, fiber, fat combo we talked about. Or maybe it's yogurt with the berries, as I mentioned earlier. Again, protein, fiber, fat, but also sleep supporting nutrients. So again, people want to really tune in to how they're feeling in those hunger cues and assess whether they need that snack for sleep.
When you mentioned snacking, I think that's a really, really good topic because um, I remember reading that many people consume the bulk of their calories after 4 p.m.
Oh,
And often
yeah,
it's
that's
in
true.
snacking because they haven't planned their snacks out and they don't realize they're getting those calories. So, having a planned snack if you're a little bit hungry is such a good idea because you do keep your overall calorie level down rather than grabbing a handful of this and a handful of that. And then before you know it, it's probably more calories than you imagined.
And sometimes we feel like we need that snack because we didn't have the balance of protein, fiber, and fat at our dinner time. So if you just had a slice of cheese pizza, now I love pizza. I'm not hating on pizza because it can provide a balance of nutrients. But if we only had one slice of cheese pizza, not enough protein there, not the good fats, and not much fiber, then we're probably going to be hungry a couple hours later. So, having the right balance at dinner may help get us through the rest of the evening. But still, again, if we didn't eat enough at that meal, then we might need a little something more. And we want to choose the right snacks for sleep.
So I typically will scramble 3 or 2 eggs, sometimes 3, and then I toss a variety of vegetables, mostly spinach, and then that's my breakfast. And I'm pretty early because I'm an early riser, and then I won't eat again until 11, and I'm pretty hungry by then. But I'll have my protein, I'll have a vegetable, and sometimes it's just protein and a vegetable. And then in the evening, when I get really lazy because I'm not much of a cook, I'll just maybe have a protein drink. But I have to confess, Carmen, it goes back to something you said earlier, that I'll find myself getting hunger pains. And if I'm not really sophisticated with the snack, maybe it's too many, carbs or empty calories. So what else should I do with my diet based on that's a typical day? I mean, I feel like I start out really good, but then I fade.
Yeah, yeah. And it's definitely great to start the day with a good breakfast, and it sounds like you're doing that. And the spinach will provide some of that magnesium you need. You have your tryptophan in the eggs. Um, you mentioned that maybe there's not enough carbohydrates potentially at lunch. You said protein and veggies. And so carbohydrates get a bad rap, but they also have those important nutrients we need for good sleep, including vitamin B6. And so if we're not getting enough vitamin B6 in our day, that whole tryptophan to serotonin, melatonin transaction we talked about, it won't happen as it needs to. We need vitamin B6 to also make that chain of events happen. And so, um, vitamin B6 is something that we can get in our whole grain foods as well. Also, some of our protein foods. But um, I like to remind people, especially when I see that they're not eating enough carbohydrates in their day, those good quality carbohydrates like oats, um, you know, any whole grain, that we can add some of those in. And then you shared about sometimes not feeling like making a dinner, so it's a protein shake, and that can have, of course, a good amount of protein in it and maybe some carbohydrates, but it's often pretty low in calories. And so you could wake up hungry, like you said. You might be experiencing that on a nightly basis, and whether it's having a different meal for dinner or adding in that bedtime snack to just help get you through the 7 to 8+ hours that we want of sleep. Sorry, I'll say 7 to 8. I don't want people to think sleep more, but 7 to 8 hours of sleep that we need. That's a long time to go. And I've been there where I've woken up in the middle of the night and I felt hungry. I go to the kitchen. I might have a very small bowl of cereal. And when I say small bowl, I am talking about cereal that I can like put in the palm of my hand, put that in a bowl, add a little bit of milk. That's enough to just ease that hunger. Plus, it's a good balance of protein, fiber, and fat.
I liked your idea about the bread. You said nut butter and then some banana slices. That sounds like a really good
See,
snack.
you're adding to your repertoire of foods to choose
am.
from.
am.
Most people get stuck on several different meals, and
Yeah.
and that's it. So
Yep.
there you go. She's expanding that, and I mean, and it sounds like it's second nature with you on what you should eat and how to get a better sleep after writing a book on it and studying it like you have. Curious. Your other book was on the DASH diet. Curious on the transition from that to the DASH diet. Could you tell us a little bit about that? And are there similarities, or do people with high blood pressure have trouble sleeping?
Sure. Yeah. So, for those who aren't familiar with DASH diet, DASH is an acronym. It stands for Dietary Approaches to Stop Hypertension. And it's been around since the 80s. It's while the word diet is attached to it, it's an eating pattern. It's not restrictive at all. It focuses on adding in more fruits and vegetables, primarily because they contain a lot of potassium. Potassium helps support blood pressure. We don't always talk about that a lot. People think just limit sodium, but potassium is so important for helping with our blood pressure. And so, I have known about the DASH diet since my undergrad, and I've talked to so many people about the DASH diet and the benefits. And whether you have high blood pressure or not, honestly, we all could be benefiting from eating a more DASH diet style. Um, how the book came about is the publisher I worked with to write Eat to Sleep asked me if I would like to write the cookbook on DASH diet and with that meal prep angle. And so, of course, I did. That culinary nutrition side of me, I love getting in the kitchen and creating recipes that help people get those important nutrients in, whether it's supporting heart health or sleep. And, you asked if there's kind of a connection there, and there definitely is. More people, or I should say, people are not getting enough fruits and veggies every day. We know that. And the DASH diet and also new sleep research is showing that when we eat 5 servings of fruits and vegetables a day, they see a 16% reduction in sleep disruptions. And then from the blood pressure standpoint, we know those fruits and veggies, because of the potassium, the fiber, the water content, it's doing great things for our heart as well.
Tell us real quickly too more about your book, Eat to Sleep, or at least where we should get it. I'm assuming I can go on Amazon, and where are some other options for people to get the book?
Yes, anywhere books are sold, you should be able to find Eat to Sleep. And so if you go into a local book retailer in your city, your town, and they're not carrying it, they should be able to get it for you. Or of course, Amazon, Barnes and Noble, those larger retailers carry it as well. And same with everything DASH diet meal prep cookbook.
Sounds good. Well, this has really been fascinating, and we always ask our guests for their last question if they could have our audience take away 3 key factors. What would you like them to remember?
I would say the focus on the protein, fiber, fat combos is really a good overarching way to think about your meals without having to think about every single nutrient that could help with sleep. So rather than saying like, am I getting enough tryptophan in today? Or did I eat enough melatonin and magnesium? Again, just the protein foods are high fiber foods and healthy fats. Thinking about that on your plate is often easier. So starting there. And then second, caffeine and alcohol. We did talk about those. And I just think sometimes, especially with caffeine, they really sneak into our day, or we just aren't thinking about when we're consuming them late into the day. And so even hot chocolate can have some caffeine. I think of one client in particular who was drinking hot chocolate every night before bed, and she was very caffeine sensitive. And so that's another area to focus.
Chocolate in general, right? Chocolate in general has caffeine, correct?
Yes, and dark chocolate will have more caffeine than milk chocolate. I love dark chocolate, and so I don't want anyone to be like, that's why I shouldn't eat it. Um, it is going to have more antioxidants, but it also has a little bit more caffeine. So just be mindful of those portions. And again, if you're really caffeine sensitive, when you should cut that off. And then the last tip I would share, it will be related to melatonin because it's such a hot topic and people always reach for that melatonin supplement first to help them with sleep. I'm going to highly encourage you to try some tart cherry juice before bed, even just 4 ounces before bed with your maybe evening snack, maybe a handful of almonds or that cup of yogurt. Um, Getting those natural sources of melatonin in through your day rather than turning to a supplement, um, that can be all you need for a good night's sleep.
I love cherries and I love cherry pie. So I'm sure I'm going to
You'll love
love,
cherry juice.
yes,
Yeah, there you
tart
go. And a
cherry
lot of
juice.
antioxidants in
Yeah.
it as well. So it's good for you in a variety of respects.
I
But
like that tip.
this has been really fascinating, Carmen. Thank you so much for all this information. And we will have your book also in our write up on our Fill Your Plate Now so people can find it there as well. And really appreciate you being with us today. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Tammy and Julie. It was so much fun chatting with you.